The day my son called, I expected to hear my grandchildren laughing in the background. Instead, I heard a voice so cold it barely sounded like the little boy I had raised. My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 68, a widow, and I thought nothing could hurt more than losing my husband. I was wrong. My son calmly told me he and his family had moved to Florida a week earlier and simply forgot to tell me. In that moment, my heart shattered. They had planned an entirely new life without saying goodbye, while still smiling at my dinner table, accepting my help, and pretending everything was normal. When I hung up the phone, I realized I had not been forgotten. I had been discarded. As I sat alone in my silent house, memories flooded my mind. I remembered staying awake through my son's childhood illnesses, helping him through college, paying his family's rent when they struggled, covering private school tuition for my grandchildren, and treating every dollar I gave them as an act of love instead of an obligation. Then I remembered something even more important. Every apartment, every company vehicle, every monthly payment came through me. My late husband had been the public face of our family business, but I had always managed the finances. They thought I was nothing more than a lonely old woman. They had forgotten I controlled everything they depended on. Instead of crying, I opened my laptop and wrote one email to my attorney. I canceled every monthly transfer, froze every company credit card, ordered the return of the company SUV, and started legal action over the apartment they had abandoned without notice. I also instructed my lawyer to investigate the expensive oceanfront apartment they had rented in Florida. When I pressed send, I felt no anger, only peace. They wanted independence, and I decided to give them exactly that. The next day, I visited the apartment they had left behind. The place was filthy, but what hurt most was what I found in the trash. There was an old photo album filled with family memories that included me, and beside it lay a yellow knitted baby blanket I had spent months making for my grandson before he was born. It was stained with grease and tossed away like garbage. At that moment, every excuse I had ever made for my son and his wife disappeared. They had not only rejected me, they had thrown away the love I had poured into their lives for decades. Soon my phone exploded with missed calls and desperate messages. Their bank cards no longer worked. Their grocery shopping was declined. Their children's school payment failed. Instead of apologizing, they demanded answers and accused me of ruining their lives. My attorney soon uncovered something even worse. My son and his wife had secretly used an old power of attorney to list me as the financial guarantor on their luxury Florida lease without my knowledge. If they stopped paying rent, I would be responsible for everything. That was not a misunderstanding. It was fraud. I immediately revoked the guarantee, ordered the company SUV repossessed, and prepared legal action. Within days, they lost the vehicle, faced eviction from their expensive apartment, and suddenly realized that the comfortable life they enjoyed had never been built by their hard work. It had been built on my sacrifices. When my son finally called, he accused me of losing my mind. I calmly reminded him that every decision had consequences. Love did not mean allowing someone to exploit you forever. A few days later, they appeared at my front gate exhausted, angry, and completely broken. I welcomed my grandchildren inside with open arms, but left their parents standing outside. For the first time in years, I looked my son in the eye without guilt. I handed him a legal agreement prepared by my attorney. If he admitted his fraud, accepted responsibility, found honest work, and rebuilt his life without depending on me, I would not press criminal charges. If he refused, the lawsuit would begin that very afternoon. After a long silence, my son signed. Over the following months, everything changed. He accepted an ordinary office job. His wife found part-time work. They moved into a modest apartment instead of a luxury condo, learned to budget every dollar, and finally understood the value of honest labor. My grandchildren stayed with me during the week, surrounded by stability instead of chaos, while their parents slowly rebuilt their lives through hard work instead of entitlement. One Sunday, nearly 6 months later, they arrived at my home carrying homemade dessert instead of excuses. My son thanked me for refusing to rescue him from the consequences of his own choices. His wife apologized for throwing away the blanket I had knitted with love and quietly admitted she had started learning to knit herself. Looking at them, I realized I had not destroyed my family. I had saved it. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to protect people from the consequences they created. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are respect. And I finally learned that a mother's heart can remain full of love while still being strong enough to say no.